안녕하세요 여러분. 오늘은 예전에 약속드린 대로 리비안 CEO와 리비안의 대표 투자기업 중 하나인 제가 다니고 있는 회사의 대표이사가 서로 만나 인터뷰한 영상을 나누고자 합니다. 과연 전기차의 시대가 도래하는지, 아님 과거 2000년 닷컴 버블처럼 너도 나도 전기차 만든다고 하면서 투자만 유치하고 실적은 못 내는 버블의 시작인지 판단하고 투자하는데 도움이 되었으면 좋겠습니다. 그럼 시작하겠습니다. 우선 최근까지의 리비안 주가인데요. 지난 11월 100불대 이상에서 상장에 성공하고 처음엔 시장의 기대감에 180불대까지 치솟았지만 그 후엔 60불대까지 거의 3분의 1 토막이 난 상황입니다. 요즘 거의 대부분의 기술주들이 그렇듯 연준의 긴축 정책 때문에 리비안의 주가도 영 힘을 못 쓰고 있는데요. 다른 전기차 생산 기업들의 주가에 비해 리비안만 유독 더 타격이 심한 듯 싶습니다. 아무래도 제일 후발주자라 그런 걸까요? 오늘 인터뷰의 주인공 리비안의 창업자이자 대표이사인 RJ Scaringe는 1983년생으로 MIT에서 기계공학으로 석사와 박사학위를 받았고 어려서부터 자동차를 정말 좋아했고 친환경적이고 지속가능한 자동차를 만드는데 일생을 바치겠다 결심했답니다. 자, 그럼 과연 믿고 투자할 만한 사람인지 인터뷰 영상을 통해 만나보시죠.
I'd like to introduce you to my friend RJ Scaringe. You all know him as the founder and CEO of Rivian Automotive. Everybody's been talking about these trucks. You see a couple of them in our background, but RJ, if you don't mind, we've gone around the company. We've talked about everything going on at Cox. Bring us into the here and now. What's going on here? What's behind us?
Yeah, so we're sitting in our delivery center, and what we're looking at between these two vehicles, this is the first product of a broad spectrum of products we're going to be building over the coming years. But this is what we call our R1T. And the R1T has been something that we've been developing and designing for a number of years, but really it was born out of the idea of it being a brand platform for us to build. And that brand platform being really designed around enabling and inspiring adventure, enabling the kinds of trips you've had a chance to take in your blue R1T. But this serves as the tip of the spear for the brand. It's the first product. It's critical. It really comes together well. And we're just in that early stage of ramping up. So we're beginning to start to produce vehicles. You and I just walked through the plant. As you can see, we're getting the production system really moving. We walked through the factory today. We saw just all the robotics, the machines, the batteries, everything. The last time I was here, it was completely empty. Prior to that, I had talked to RJ a little bit along his journey, but we met at the Cox headquarters building. We were in a room. You brought some virtual reality goggles. I'd never put on VR goggles before, and I was inside of a vehicle, but you were showing this vision. So I started the company 12 years ago, and initially the product plan was different, the strategy was different. And one of the really sort of interesting things about starting a business like this is it requires so many simultaneous items. You need to have a lot of capital, technology, brand, factory, suppliers. And in the beginning, having none of those things was actually really powerful because it allowed us to really think hard about saying, what are we going to do? Why does the world need this? So we then went to work on that product. And of course, not having all the capital to build it, not having all the supply chain.
So that was an idea. It wasn't necessarily a truck. It was
an adventure mobile thing. And as we started to put it together, we had to find ways to bridge sort of ideas to that future state. So you were part of that. And so when we spent time together, what I showed you in VR and virtual reality was digital versions of essentially what became this product. And I remember in that you were like, boy, this is really cool. And I think you said something like, so do you think you can actually make these? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And we're so fortunate to have you really believe in the vision and of course, Cox support us.
I would love to go back a little bit further. Did you grow up as a gearhead? Did you grow up as a software nerd?
So since I was about this tall, I've been just a massive enthusiast of anything automotive, sports cars, off-road vehicles. So that led me to just getting deeply engaged in everything automotive, from the history of automobiles to the design of them. And then ultimately I got into building cars and restoring classic cars. And along the way, I realized this is what I wanted to do for sort of my life's focus. And by the time I was sort of finishing high school, I realized I wanted to start this company.
So did you work in garages growing up?
Yes, like restoration shop and machine shops, yeah.
Wow.
But I knew I wanted to start this company. I had no idea what that even meant. So I went to school for mechanical engineering and then went to MIT and did a master's and PhD in automotive engineering with the mechanical focus and powertrain efficiency focus. And through that, fortunately had the chance to get a lot of exposure to large existing OEMs and realized that the opportunity to build something new and to design the business at its core around innovation and a business that really invited new ideas, the opportunity was right in front of us. So I started a company right out of MIT. One of the things that really inspired me was this juxtaposition of my passion for automobiles and then the realization over time that automobiles are the root cause of so many of the world's challenges, everything from local air quality issues to climate change to a lot of our geopolitical issues stem from automobiles. So it really bummed me out, and it was what sort of caused me to say, boy, we need to go work on solving this and create vehicles that are not only exciting, but also help solve some of these fundamental challenges around sustainability, around safety, and it led to the decision to start this.
The thing that is so hard to understand for so many people is you can be a kid with a dream. We all have kids with dreams. You then can be smart enough to go to MIT and get a PhD, and you can then sort of be a business visionary and have an idea of what it is you want to do. Then convincing someone else that you're good enough to pull this off and getting funding, millions, hundreds of millions, then billions. Is an undertaking. Finding a factory, making some multi-million square foot operation, put things together and spit out a car that is approved by the government, safe enough for people to put their kids in, to ultimately IPOing, becoming a public company CEO, which is a whole nother set of headaches. There's so few people that have been able to take it from one to the other, and there's turning points between each one of those stages when you would normally just sort of bug out and somebody else would come in and take over and do that for you. Can you talk a little bit about your journey from being a kid with a dream to a business person to a public company CEO and a manufacturer of an American car company? Lessons you've learned, the biggest challenges mentally you faced. How do you learn during those stages?
A lot of the challenges early on, so the lack of capital, the inability to recruit people, suppliers that wouldn't take meetings, investors you couldn't even get meetings with. All of those challenges each actually were really helpful in the sense that they forced some level of learning. And one of the biggest ahas I've had later on is that the velocity of learning was so high in the beginning that it was actually good that all those things weren't there to start. If on day one we had $10 billion in capital and all of our suppliers lined up and all the different ingredients in place, it wouldn't have provided me the chance to make a lot of mistakes and to go through this really sharp learning curve. I'm constantly sort of looking at what the decisions I'm taking, the actions we're driving as a business, and saying how can we do those better? Because it's perfectly fine, and in fact I think it's good to allow yourself to make mistakes, because you're pushing yourself and allow the business to try things that may not have certainty of working, but you must learn from them. And so if I look back, if I were to watch myself sort of probably meet with the first set of investors, I'd probably be cringing. But all those times that investors weren't interested in meeting or didn't find the idea to be something that had any likelihood of success, each one of those was an opportunity to learn. So that for me, I look back in those first few years, was really formative.
So half the people out here watching this are leaders of groups of people. I've noticed in my time there's entrepreneurs that are really great at running startups. There's people who might not be good at running a startup. They're just big scale efficiency operations people, and there's everything in between. You've got a mix of sort of small company entrepreneurs, probably a small team that's been with you from way back when, and then you've got some big industrial operations efficiency people. What have you noticed about how those two worlds collide and how you get them to work together?
One of the things that we talk a lot about internally is our success as a company is a collective success, meaning we can't be successful as an accounting arm where the product's not, or the product can't be successful if our finance function is not successful and our IT function requires the product. So everything's highly interdependent, which is another way of saying that we need to effectively work together. The products, the nature of our business is complex enough that it needs all of us to be able to reach decisions together, make trade-offs together. And within that, there's lots of diversity of thought, there's lots of diversity of experience. And so what we drive towards in terms of creating that collaborative environment is really making sure we create the backdrop where people feel comfortable challenging each other, comfortable holding each other accountable, comfortable with very different ways of presenting or thinking about ideas. but ultimately being in an environment where we can reach decisions, and lots of decisions. I do a weekly onboarding session for all of our new hires, and I talk about sort of the way decisions get made. And if you take, in our case, 11,000 employees, and you assume each employee is making 5 decisions that impact someone other than themselves a day, that's 55,000 decisions that are rippling across the business on a daily basis. And so that sort of really high frequency of decisions means that we need to become effective at managing all these different personalities, managing all these different ways of looking at things, and moving forward together. So we've designed a lot of the way we operate, a lot of our systems to embrace the fact that this is a system of people, and we make promotions, we make hiring decisions around how effective the teams work together, combining very scrappy entrepreneurial mindsets with maybe more scaled mindsets often requires like a lot of intentionality. But it's my role ultimately at the leadership level, my leaders effectively to do that within their organizations, to make sure that the ingredients, so to speak, that the teams we're putting together are effective at driving progress.
One of the whys you mentioned earlier was solving problems, and particularly environmental problems, smog, air quality, climate change. I once said to you, I was like, are there like 1,000 iPhone batteries in one of these things?
Yeah.
You said more like 10,000.
Yeah.
So 10,000 iPhones in one truck. You're going to make 10,000 trucks, then 10 million trucks. Is the new model going to be better? Are we ultimately going to solve the problem of climate change?
One of the things we need to recognize is the scale of what we have to change. And so if you look at all the vehicles on the planet today and the whole energy infrastructure, it's really been built around a fossil fuel backbone. And that fossil fuel backbone really consists of hundreds of millions of years of accumulated plant animal life buried in the crust of the earth that we're now very rapidly extracting and essentially recarbonizing the atmosphere. We're reversing hundreds of millions of years of atmospheric decarbonization with 100 years of recarbonization. So the rate at which we're moving carbon into the atmosphere is staggering. And unfortunately, it's not like we can press a button and have this like perfectly binary switch to something that has no problems and no issues. So it is going to be a bit of a transition. And in that transition, we have to simultaneously change the grid from something that's less than 10% renewable to 100% renewable, which brings with it all sorts of grid architecture questions and battery storage questions. We also have to change the usage of energy on all of our end devices, whether it's cars or planes or boats. And in the case of vehicles, storing energy chemically in the form of a battery is the most appropriate long-term solution. But the batteries we're using today have challenges. They have challenges in terms of their upstream supply chain, and they have challenges in terms of energy density. But the innovation that's happening will not only clean up those upstream supply chains, but we'll also make sure that the batteries can be not only reused for second life for things like storage, but just as importantly, we're able to recapture all those raw materials. So the lithium that goes into these vehicles will first, after the end of this vehicle's life, will go into stationary storage, and then we'll recycle that.
Stationary storage, meaning the car will be taken off of it, you'll have a battery bank, you then stack them up and put them near a power plant, or?
Exactly. And so we've designed the batteries such that if the vehicle's life were to end, we could harvest the batteries and use them for stationary storage. And then at the end of that battery's life, we would be able to harvest the raw materials. So in the end state, when we convert 1.5 billion vehicles on the planet to electric, we'll have tens of millions of electric vehicles coming out of the system every year, where we have to either reuse the batteries for second life application or recycle the raw material. But there is that process over the next several decades of having to extract enough raw materials and put them into circulation in the world. But it is very much will be a circular use cycle. So these are not things that will be throwing away gold or throwing away lithium. It'll get recycled into. And
that's a whole new ecosystem, one that we're getting involved in with Spears Technology, and I'm sure you'll be focused on in your new battery plant. I've heard rumors, I guess they're public now, you're moving something to Georgia. There's
Yes.
a lot coming to our neck of the woods where our headquarters is.
So the R1T and the R1S, think of those as the brand platform. They're the tip of the spear, and they really open the brand umbrella for us as a company. So the facility we're putting in Atlanta really is the next stage of that growth. It's going to be a very unique facility, highly vertically integrated, a very large facility. This is around 3.5 million square feet now. That will be around 5 times larger. So it'll be north of 15 million square feet
Is there anything? I mean, that's
the biggest building in the United States. Yeah, by far. Be the biggest automotive plant in the world. So, what's driving that scale though is the vertical integration of battery cells, a lot of the structural architecture of the vehicle, the electronics in the vehicle, and going after, as we view it, these really important building blocks to deliver connected, smart vehicles that drive themselves and have a lot of autonomous features. We own those technologies, and we want to make sure that we're building those in our facility.
How often are you going to be in Georgia?
Oh, yeah. So I'm planning to be in Georgia. Yeah. So when we launched this facility here about a year ago, I moved here to Illinois from California. My wife was not too happy about the winters. Once this facility is stable, I'll move to Georgia and be part of ramping up that facility.
Everybody here balances personal life, business life. How do you stay grounded?
When I met my wife, she didn't understand what I was doing. So she thought I was worked as a car salesman. And I tried to explain to her, and she's like, "So you're starting a car company?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you think that could work?" And I'm like, "It will." But so she's only known me as sort of working a lot, and she's helped me in so many ways find balances. We've had kids, so I have 3 kids. My oldest is about to turn 6, but he's 5 now. My youngest is 3, so 5, 4, 3, all boys. You have to really be intentional around creating the balance, and that intentionality around finding ways to make sure you're spending appropriate time with family, with kids, solving all the issues within the business, pays dividends. And I find I spend a few hours or a few days with my kids, and I'm making higher quality decisions. I'm more inspired. In fact, some of my hardest questions I ever get asked are by my kids. They have incredible their ability to ask why on things that we just accept as the norm. So the ability for kids to ask the hard questions and hold us as adults accountable, because we're ultimately creating the world that they're going to inherit, I find to be both invigorating and really inspiring. And so I've tried to pull them into this journey as well. So they, whether it was the IPO, they were there, the first vehicle coming off the line, they were part of it. But it's been really fun finding and learning how to balance better.
One of the things I found most interesting in talking to RJ is I was talking about bright farms and controlled environment agriculture, and he lit up and said, one of the things you mentioned was that you've thought a lot about this. What are your thoughts on agriculture, and why did that connect with you?
If I hadn't started Rivian, the 2 other areas I would have liked to focus on are education and sustainable farming. And I think if you think about the big challenges we're going to have as a planet over the next 50 to 100 years, transportation and energy is a huge challenge. But an equally important challenge is producing enough food for the planet and doing it in a sustainable way where we don't destroy our very sort of means to produce food. Because I think it's an area that needs to have both a lot of investment and a lot of innovation. Because we do still have, we don't realize it sitting here in the US and with the lifestyle and the wealth that our country provides, but a lot of the world doesn't have enough food. A staggering amount of the world doesn't have enough food. And that challenge only gets worse as we put more and more people on the planet. I'm very bullish on the need for investment and innovation in agriculture for sure.
Do you have any advice for our employees, your company to our company?
We're at a really critical crossroads as society. We're seeing that flare up in so many different ways. I think it's really important to recognize the work that we do will affect many generations to come. It's like a once in many thousand year opportunity to have this inflection point. And I think it's important to stay, given the scale of those challenges, to stay optimistic and to stay positive, and to stay curious, because all those are force multipliers for solving some of these big, almost unsolvable challenges that we have in front of us. We as a planet have to do a bunch of things that seemingly are impossible. Just starting a car company is seemingly impossible. But really having a positive, leaned-in attitude makes all the difference. And the inverse of that is also true. Cynical attitudes, negative attitudes really make things hard to do. So we have a lot in front of us, and it's an exciting time, but with the right attitude, we will get it there.
Last year in 2021, Cox Enterprises in our Scope 1 and Scope 2 carbon emissions and reducing our personal carbon footprint, the one we touch, we reduced of the global carbon footprint 1/332,000th of the global 51 gigatons of carbon that humans put in the atmosphere above and beyond what is natural. And while that's a small number, 1/332,000, if our little old company is capable of doing that, that doesn't even include the investment and the partnership we have with Rivian, or what we're doing in controlled environment agriculture, or Nexus, or Sierra, it makes you believe that it is actually doable.
Yeah.
And when you have people who are focused on solving a problem, no matter how big, it might start small, but ultimately, you can come together and solve a massive problem like the global carbon footprint.
And the impact is such an important thing to recognize. There's two sides of impact. One is the things we directly do. So in your example, though, 1 over 332,000. Yeah, 32,000. But the second is the ripple or the echo effect that has. It either raises the bar for other companies, or it sets an example that other companies follow. So we think about that all the time. Like with our products, we truly hope that it inspires and creates competition. It gives customers more choice, and we hope that the things we're doing in terms of carbon efficiency also inspire others, and we hope that starts to set new standards just as you're doing. So I think these are, again, the tonality that we set within the business community of what it means to be a responsible entity really will start to raise the bar across the board.
RJ, thanks you for your time. You've got a big factory and a lot of 55,000 decisions being made today, so I'll let you get back to it. But I just wanted to say congratulations. You have gotten this idea to an amazing amount of reality, and it's impressive to see it. Last time I was in this factory, it was completely empty, and there are thousands of people here working hard and making batteries and cars, and it's an inspiring accomplishment. So thank you for your time today, and we'll let you get back to work.
Thank you.
네, 잘 보셨나요? 제가 이 인터뷰를 보고 들은 생각은 우선 친환경이 주제가 아니구나라는 생각이 들었습니다. 다른 전기차 회사들과 차별성을 두면서 더욱 친환경적인 기술에 대한 언급도 구체적이지 않았고, 다른 전기차 회사들과 동일하게 배터리로 작동하는 전기차를 만들고 그나마 이 배터리를 재활용하겠다는 계획이지만 이 점도 구체적이지 못했네요. 결국 이 인터뷰의 요점은 투자 고맙다. 애틀랜타 동쪽에 5빌리언짜리 공장을 짓겠다. 다 지으면 7,500명을 고용하고 연간 40만 대를 생산하겠다가 다였네요. 제가 사는 여기 미국 조지아주 애틀랜타의 동쪽 20번 고속도로 근처에 공장을 짓겠다는 계획인데요. 이곳 애틀랜타가 원래도 물류의 중심지로 성장한 도시지만 특히 지난 10년간 자동차 생산 물류의 중심지로 다시금 떠오르고 있습니다. 우리가 잘 아는 현대, 기아 공장, 그리고 사우스캐롤라이나주의 BMW 공장이 이 85번 고속도로를 따라 연결돼 있고, 이 75번 고속도로 북쪽 방향을 따라선 폭스바겐과 닛산 자동차 공장이 있고, 그리고 그 주변으로 미국의 GM, 그리고 일본의 도요타와 마스다 공장이 있습니다. 20번 고속도로를 따라선 벤츠 공장과 혼다 공장, 그리고 이젠 리비안 공장까지 이 동쪽에 들어설 계획인 거죠. 그리고 그 중간 요점엔 이 파란색 점들, 자동차 협력업체 공장들이 빽빽하게 자리 잡고 있습니다. 특히 여기 독일 3사 공장에 부품을 납품하는 독일 협력업체 공장들이 많아서 여기 애틀랜타에 독일인들이 정말 많은데요. 이 독일 아재들이 독일어로 막 소리 지르면서 싸우면 엄청 무서워. 네, 다시 주제로 돌아가서 여기 애틀랜타의 동쪽 20번 고속도로를 따라 먼로 카운티와 메디슨 카운티의 중간 지점에 리비안 공장이 들어설 예정이라고 하고요. 이 공장은 세계 최대 규모의 공장으로 자동차 생산뿐 아니라 배터리 생산까지 함께하는 공장이라고 합니다. 근데 왜 조감도에 생산차 주차 공간이랑 테스트 트랙이 안 보이지? 아무튼 이 공장에선 일단 2종의 차량이 생산될 예정이라 하는데, 사실 뚜껑이 있냐 없냐의 차이일 뿐 같은 차죠. R1T 트럭 버전과 R1S SUV 버전이 생산될 거라 합니다. 그리고 어쩌면 이 아마존 배달 차량도 생산될 수가 있어 보입니다. 이렇게 모든 차량이 위치, 속도, 배터리 상황까지 모니터링 될 거라 하는데, 자율주행이 아닌 이상 뭐 딱히 대단해 보이진 않네요. 그래서 제가 생각하는 결론은 리비안의 제품들이 인기가 있어야 하고, 그 인기에 맞출 대량 생산 능력이 이 기업이 성공하는데 필수란 생각이 듭니다. 테슬라를 보셔서 아시겠지만 좋은 자동차를 만드는 것보다 그 품질을 유지하면서 대량 생산할 수 있는 능력이 더 힘들고, 세상엔 그걸 해낼 수 있는 기업이 많지 않죠. 그리고 리비안은 여기에 도전장을 내미는 것이고요. 현재 전기차 제조회사들의 전기차 생산 능력을 보시면 우선 대표 주자인 테슬라는 90만 대가 넘고, 후발 경쟁업체인 루시드는 이제 겨우 5만 대 수준이고 2030년까지 50만 대를 갖추겠다고 하니 아직은 멀어 보이네요. 미국의 GM은 약 40만 대, 포드는 15만 대 수준으로 역시 90년대부터 전기차 생산을 했던 GM이 앞서 나갔네요. 독일의 공룡기업 폭스바겐은 테슬라를 잡기 위해 90만 대에 도전하고 있고 일본의 도요타는 19만 대, 닛산은 10만 대 수준입니다. 한국의 현대차는 22만 대 수준으로 충분히 경쟁력 있어 보이는 출발입니다. 과연 리비안은 이 쟁쟁한 굴지 업체들을 넘어서 좋은 품질의 전기자동차를 대량 생산할 수 있을까요? 이것이 향후 주가의 방향을 결정하는 중요한 요소가 될 것입니다. 참고로 리비안 주식의 락업 기간은 180일로 11월에 상장했으니 6월 정도엔 물량이 시장에 풀리지 않을까 예상해 봅니다. 네, 오늘은 아마존을 비롯한 수많은 굵직굵직한 대기업들이 투자한 전기차 기업 리비안의 창업자이자 대표이사의 인터뷰를 공유해 보았는데요. 어떠셨나요? 제 개인적인 생각으론 똑똑한 사람이면 틀림없지만 다른 전기차 기업과는 다른 뭔가 리비안만의 장점과 차별성을 부각시키진 못했다는 생각이 들었습니다. 또한 이 기업의 제품이 시장의 인기를 끌고 그 인기에 부합할 만한 대량 생산 능력을 갖출지 또한 우리가 지켜봐야 할 요인일 듯 싶습니다. 아무쪼록 오늘 영상이 여러분의 리비안 투자 결정에 도움이 되었기를 바라며 오늘도 시청해주신 모든 분들께 진심으로 감사드립니다.